Hey guys, Tech Mention with the video for you guys. In today's video, we're going to compare the new iPhone 14 Pro with the iPhone 12 Pro Max here that was released 2 years ago. In this video, we're going to talk about the hardware, the software, camera, battery life, and overall performance between these two devices. And finally, answer the question if it's worth upgrading from the iPhone 12 Pro Max to the iPhone 14 Pro. Now, it's an upgrade in terms of generation, but in terms of size, it's a downgrade because you have the Pro Max versus a regular Pro Edition, which is a downgraded size. However, this is just to see if you're really looking to downsize in terms of not having the Pro Max and just going to the Pro lineup here, because for the part, they have pretty much similar features upgrade when it comes to the upgrade itself. So we're going to talk about it. So let's go and kind of start look at the first thing, which is going to be, of course, the release date. We mentioned the 12 Pro Max was released about 2 years ago. It's hard to believe, but it's been 2 years. And the iPhone 14 Pro, which was released recently, about a few months ago. So you can see here, right here, the big difference is the size here, which again, you got a 6.1 inch display on the 14 Pro here with that dynamic island here, and then the iPhone, of course, 12 Pro Max, which has a 6.7 inch, so a bigger display here, and then of course that top notch here. So that's kind of the look of it, of course, because of the way they are designed. If we take a look at the back here on the phone, you notice here again, very similar design. It's hard to kind of tell, besides like the camera, of course, are much bigger on the 14 Pro than the 12 Pro Max here. That's probably the other thing. But besides the size itself, when it comes to specs, the iPhone 14 Pro does have a new upgraded iOS with the new upgraded feature that's a 48 megapixel camera with two 12 megapixel camera. But however, on the 12 Pro Max, you just get triple 12 megapixel camera, which makes a difference when it comes to some of the video or even photos that you take. But if you look at side by side here, the other thing you notice is the color here. So the iPhone Pro and the Pro Max lineup comes in the base colors. Both of them do have silver, gold, and then the black or the midnight edition. But both of these I'm holding here special colors. On the 14 Pro, which has the new deep purple color. This is the new color. Every time Apple releases their Pro lineup, they add the base plus a new additional color for the 14 Pro, which is the purple color, which again, a deeper shade. On the 12 Pro Max is this Pacifico blue, which is a special color in its edition as well. So if you look at it, there's a darker shade of their color. But let's look at other things in terms of the body. As you know, of course, the other thing you'll notice for the iPhone, both of them do have 5G capability. The iPhone 12 Pro lineup was the first time 5G was introduced in the iPhone lineup here. But one of the other big physical differences is that eSIM card versus physical SIM card. The iPhone 12 Pro Max does have a physical SIM card. Unfortunately, in the US model for the 14 Pro, there is no longer a physical SIM card. You have to activate it through eSIM, which will make a difference for some people, especially if you travel around or if you switch out your SIM a lot. You can't quite do that. You have to go through your carrier to activate it. But again, it could be a advantage the iPhone 12 Pro Max has over the iPhone 14 Pro for some users that prefer the physical SIM card. Again, it's a personal preference in terms of what do you use your phone for. So let's move on to the display itself. We mentioned again the display here, but other things to mention about it, the 14 Pro does come with 120 hertz refresh rate versus 60 refresh rate on the 12 Pro Max. And of course, the very first time on iPhone is this always on feature. As you can see here, when I close it and try to lock it, that always on feature activates, which again, you can toggle it on and off by going into the settings here and display. You'll see here the option for the always on here. Unfortunately, that is not available on the 12 Pro Max here on our hand. So let's move on to the next thing, which is the battery life. So both of the phones do have pretty big batteries. Surprisingly, the iPhone 12 Pro Max has almost a 400 more mAh battery, so bigger size battery because it is a bigger phone. But when it comes to actual test of video playback, which determines how well the software handles power itself, the iPhone 14 Pro surprisingly has a 23-hour video playback versus the 19 hours of video playback on the 12 Pro Max. Again, it's a difference that you may not consider, but something to look at when you're comparing both of these two phones. Again, the other thing about these two phones is the hardware chipset that's built into both of these two phones, which is slightly different here. So on the iPhone 14, because it's a 2-year-old model, it does have what's known as the A14 Bionic chip, and from the upgraded iPhone 14 Pro has A16 Bionic chip, so when you do some benchmarking tests, we'll share our results a little bit later in this video, but that's something to note about. The other hardware thing or software thing you might want to consider is the amount of storage you get. The iPhone 14 Pro, you can go max out to 128 to 1 terabyte. The iPhone 12 Pro Max unfortunately goes up to 512 gig, half that 1 terabyte. So if you're looking for the most storage, the iPhone 14 Pro again gets that for you. Now let's move on to the next thing, which is going to be the camera. Again, a big thing about the camera we discussed was the size and then the new upgraded camera, that 48 megapixel. But when it comes to other things like the zoom here, you'll notice here you have 15 versus 12 zoom. Of course, both of the phones that have the photography mode, but photographic style isn't available on the 12 Pro Max. It's only available on the iPhone 14 Pro. And then when it comes to video, which is going to be the difference between these two phones, both of the phones again take exceptionally stunning videos up to 4K 60 frames per second. But one thing to note on the iPhone 14 Pro, for the very first time comes this action mode. Now you can pretty much have much more stabilization if you're on the go trying to record. And then along with that is cinematic mode. Now cinematic mode isn't quite new to the 14 lineup, but it was a feature coming from the 13 Pro and the Pro Max, carrying over to iPhone 14 Pro, which isn't available on the 12 Pro Max. So those are some upgrades that you might consider if you're looking purely on the camera itself. Now let's move on to the next thing on these two phones is the software here. Now it's important to talk about the software because both of the phones are supported on the latest version of iOS 16. Well, the iPhone 14 Pro already comes shipped with iOS 16, and you can upgrade iPhone 12 Pro Max to iOS 16, which we did a review video for you guys, and so far iOS 16 has held up pretty well when it comes to using all of the new features that come with it. And when it comes to feature, we start to take a look at that both of the phones. When we're looking at these two phones, its ability to basically launch and do most of the popular applications without crashing on us. So as you can see here, we can pretty much go through both of the phones, launch all of our popular social media app, to video streaming, to music app, to just simply browsing. And you notice both of the phones hold up well. And that's kind of one of the perks about iPhone, is this ability to have a software that's pretty much stable when it comes to just doing most of the stuff. Now, the iPhone 12 Pro Max, I will say it's much better when it comes to streaming stuff because of that size, that 6.1 inch versus a 6.7 inch. Again, a beautiful display overall, and overall software issues with that display that we have. So kind of breaking it down, essentially stable software on both of the phones on iOS 16 here. Finally, let's really talk about why you might consider, if you're just considering between the 12 Pro Max and the iPhone 14 Pro, why might you consider the 12 Pro Max? We mentioned, again, a little bit bigger size battery, but again, when it comes to the efficiency size, the iPhone 14 Pro does win. The size of the display, again, beautiful size display. Now, probably the biggest thing why you're probably choosing a 12 Pro Max over a 14 Pro is the price that you can get it. So you can get the phone. Now, you can't buy it directly from Apple because Apple doesn't sell the new one, but you can get this phone, if you like, from eBay or Amazon, which will leave the link in the description section for you guys. You can score this phone for around $500 or even under $600, almost half the price you pay, which is $999 on the new 14 Pro. So you can pretty much get the same software and a bigger size phone, with exception of minor updates like the dynamic island, probably the always on feature, and 120 Hz refresh rate, again, but half the cost. So that's where the iPhone 12 Pro Max wins. Its ability pretty much to deliver most of the stuff at a fraction of the cost. Now, why'd you consider the 14 Pro? Of course, it's the latest and the greatest. All of the features that you can think of comes with the iPhone 14 Pro here. It's 2 years older, so you're going to get probably 3 to 4 years out of the 12 Pro Max versus almost 5 to 6 years out of the iPhone 14 Pro. Now, other things to mention, is the display here. It's much brighter display nit when it comes to maxing out the brightness. You also get the 120 Hz refresh rate. Now, when you do some benchmarking tests, we surprisingly, because of that upgraded chipset, the iPhone 14 Pro does get about 37% better, pretty much benchmark. Basically, just to the naked eye, it won't probably make much of a difference, but it is something worth mentioning, is that efficiency that you get. You, of course, get upgrades in terms of the Bluetooth here, and of course, there's a new type of memory, just a little bit faster, which is LPDDR5, again, just for better storage in terms of just storing stuff on the phone. So that's kind of the comparison. Of course, we said price point is what it's going to come down to if you're thinking about upgrading or if you're choosing between these two devices. So that's why we want to hear from you guys. What's your thought on the iPhone 14 Pro versus the iPhone 12 Pro Max? If you guys used one of them, if you guys upgraded from one to another, leave a comment in the comment section. We'd love to hear your input while you're at it. We appreciate you guys hitting that like and subscribe button for future videos and updates just like this. Thanks for watching, guys. See you guys next time.